road. And we get there, and we kind of park towards the side of the building. And the second I park and turn off the lights, Corey is like, I'm getting out. Here I go. Let's do this. And Googie and I kind of both look at him and we're like, I don't know, man. He's like, I don't care what you guys are doing. I'm getting out of the car right now. I'm going in. So he's like, okay, I'm going. He jumps out of the car. He goes inside and disappears. He walks in the door that we had been looking at for, however long, our whole life, what goes on in there. He just walked in there. So Googie and I are out there, and we're kind of like, oh my God, what just happened? He went and did it. So there's one of two things that are going to happen. He's either going to get busted, and we're going to have to bail him out of there somehow, or he's in. Or Corey's in. He's in, and he's watching, girls dance naked and drinking a beer right now. So while we're there, we're sitting there, we're kind of discussing. For some reason, this car comes up behind us. And this car, I swear, had its bright lights on. And it's shining in. It's shining its bright lights. It pulls up behind us, and there's no way for us to go forward. We went to the back of the parking lot, and we can't pull out of there. And this car pulls up right behind us and has its lights on. And in retrospect, it may have just been a car pulling up and turning around or something. But one way or another, this car was there. It seemed like an eternity, but it went away. It was enough though to freak Googie and I out. Well, we're sitting there and we're like, oh my God, Corey just went in there, and now this thing with the headlights happens. And we start freaking out. Away. They went away, but we're like, somebody is on to us, right? Okay. Somebody is on to us. So I pull out, and with the full consent of Googie, I pull out, and I pull out of the driveway, and we start driving back to town. And we're like, we got to get out of here, And then, not even, 30 seconds, a minute into it, we're like, what? Wait, what are we doing? Corey's back in there. We can't leave Corey in there. We can't leave Corey in there. So I turn around and I go back and I park in just a regular spot that's in the middle of the parking lot. And of course, there's no cars. There's no cop cars. There's no car. There's no people watching us. It's just it's just something that freaked us out. So I get back, and I'm like, geez, I think about this for, a couple minutes, and I'm like, Corey's in there. He's hyped it up so big at school. If he's the only one that goes in there, Googie, you and I are going to feel like complete idiots, It's like we have to go in there. And Googie's like, no, I never wanted to do this. In the first place, I will never go in there. I don't want to do it. I'm like, Googie, I understand. Here's the keys to my car. I gotta go in. I'm like, I'm going in. Somewhere I pulled up the nerve to do this because I was in the same boat as he was. I didn't want to do it either. The punishment was much better than the ridicule that I would have faced for Corey being the only one of us that went in. So I'm like, I'm gonna do it. Okay, I pull up some composure and get my costume just right, and I go in. Well, I get to the door and I open it, and there's it's kind of an interesting situation. There's a door, and then there's kind of this little, entryway, and then there's another door. So you open one door, and it's not really anything. It's like a little entryway. And then you walk to the second door, and you open it. And I got to tell you, being 17 years old, it was like a dream. It was so surreal. There's smoke. There's they had fog machines going. There's purple lights. There's blue lights. There's people having a good time. There's booze. I wasn't even a drinker in a bar. I'd never even been to a bar, much less a strip club. You know what I mean? So I walk in there, and about 10 feet in front of me, there's a guy taking cover charges. Behind him, I can see the girls naked, straight up naked. Right. At the time, I swear they were the most beautiful girls I'd ever seen. Obviously,
only topless, or they full?
No, they got full nude at this place. Okay. And I saw him, and it was like such a dream. So I walk up to this guy because, 10 10 seconds of this, I'm like, okay, I got to get it together. I got to go up. I got to pay this guy. And he says, hey, how you doing? I said, I'm very good. And he says, it's $7 to get in tonight. I pull out a $10 bill, takes it, gives me back $3, and he says, enjoy the show.
Oh, so you're in.
I'm like, I'm in. And what I say back to him was like, you too. You know, again, you know, and I probably shouldn't have said that. But he took it. He turned the other way. I am in.
There's some hoes in this house. If you see them, point them out. There's some hoes in this house. If you see them, point them out. There's some hoes.
I am in the strip club. I walk in. There's 3 stages. There's a main stage and 2 satellites, which are at the left and the right.
What's going on in the main stage?
You know, from what I remember, a gorgeous naked girl dancing naked in front of guys who had beers.
What about the side stages?
Same thing. It was perfect.
All right.
So I go in and I sit down at a table and I see a little 2-drink minimum sign with Frank A's marquee on it. I'm like, okay, I got to get a drink. So not long after, a waitress comes over, says, what do you want? And I say, well, if you have an Ice House, which was our beer at the time because it was like, you know, it was like an ice beer, so it had more alcohol in it. I was like, I'll have an Ice House. She says, okay, sure, no problem. So she goes and she gets me an Ice House. I sit there, watch the show for a little bit, and I'm like, wait a second, where, you know, I'm totally caught up in my own thing. I'm like, where is Corey in all of this? So I look around, I start looking at the tables. In the back of the house was their bar. It was a long bar that kind of took up maybe half of the wall in the back. So I kind of look around and I look to the back to the bar and I see Corey sitting in the corner, you know, acting like he's this old guy.
Old guy.
Yeah, old guy sitting in the farmost corner that you could be, but sitting at the bar. So after a couple minutes, I get up and I walk over to him. And I walk, you know, and I kind of do this little shtick, like I shake his hand like we've never seen each other before in our lives, I'm like, or we have, but you know we haven't seen each other recently, and so we kind of scope out the air, and there's nobody sitting around us, nobody's listening to him. So I'm like, how'd it go? He said, yeah, I just walked in here. It's perfect. I just walked in here. I went sat here. He had a couple of aspirin with him. He asked the bartender to give him a glass of water so he could take his pills. They were actually just aspirin. You know, this whole thing was just...
He's still playing the old man.
He's playing the old man, exactly. So, Corey and I are sitting there, and I'm like, you know, I gotta go use the can. So I go into the bathroom, and I get done, and I walk out back to Corey, and he's kind of sitting there, and I'm like, you know, watching the girls, and he says, hey. I'm like, what's going on? He says, look over there. And who do I see sitting there? Googie. While I was in the bathroom, Googie came in. No, he didn't see us. But Googie came in. He made it.
So all you guys made it in.
Googie made it. He got up. I can't even imagine him sitting out in that car, freezing cold, trying to get up the nerve. He was the last guy who was going to do it. I thought for sure he wasn't going to do it. So we've all 3 made it. And over the course of maybe a half hour, we all kind of run into each other, you know, talk to each other, and we decide we got to have some kind of proof for the rest of the people that we're in school with that we're there, right? So we decide we're each going to grab something. Corey grabs a cocktail napkin that has Frank A's marquee on it. I grab that 2-drink minimum little sign that's on the table that says Frank A's, and Googie grabs an ashtray. Each of us had this little piece of memorabilia from Frank A's marquee that you can only get from being in there.